Hello.
Welcome to the Abundance Show. Today we are diving deep into foundation of human potential, the places we call home. We are joined by a global visionary who is redefining how the world builds. Olivia Nielson is a principal at Miyamoto International, a world class expert who has worked in over 45 countries, from Haiti to Mongolia, make housing inclusive, to make housing inclusive, resilient, and green. But here is the game changer. Olivia isn't just looking at bricks and mortar. She is championing how artificial intelligence and data-driven insights can solve the global housing crisis. She is proving that we don't just need more homes, we need right homes built in right places for the people who need them most. Please welcome a true architect of global change, Olivia Nelson. How are you, lady?
Good, good. Thank you for having me here.
Great. I mean, before I've started asking questions. Please, I mean, what I left out of your intro, please introduce yourself and give us a small life journey.
Sure, of course. So, my entire career has focused on housing. I've had what we call the housing bug. All I care and think about is affordable housing because it's one of the biggest issues that households all over the world face today, and it's only getting more expensive. And I started my career, about 16 years ago after the earthquake in Haiti, where hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes and many more died. And I started rebuilding houses after the earthquake. But after several years of being in construction, I realized that the hard part of housing is not really the construction. Actually, the construction is quite easy once you get the hang of it. The hard part was finding the land, the policy, finding the right finance, making sure that households could get the right mortgages, and so forth and so on. Once you have all those things lined up, then the construction is quite easy. So I shifted my career to go into supporting governments, development banks, the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, and so forth and so on, helping them design better housing policies around the world and letting the local private sector. So that's kind of what I've been working on. And I've worked in so many different contexts in over 45 countries, and I think I've seen a little bit of everything. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
Wow. And would you get us a small life journey also?
My life journey? Oh, sure. I'm originally
No,
from
no,
France.
your life journey.
Yeah, my life journey right now. No, I'm originally from France. I speak French, and that's how I ended up in Haiti after the earthquake. I now live in the US, in America, but I travel a lot. Just to give you an idea, last week I was in Timor Leste. The week before I was in Cambodia. Next week I'm going to Azerbaijan. So I've kind of think of myself as a citizen of the world, and my goal was really to learn from one country's housing best practices, but also their mistakes, because I've seen a lot of mistakes, and take them to the next country. And if I know a little bit about everything going on around the world in housing, hopefully I can help other countries so they don't make the same mistakes again.
Wow, great. As you said, that the housing policy is the one that has attracted your attention towards. So, did you write any book on the housing policy too?
No, I haven't written a book yet, but that's a good idea. I write a lot of blogs, so feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. And I write a blog every month or so. And increasingly, I've been writing a lot about housing and AI because I see a lot of disruption in that space.
That's really amazing. Now, my first question is about AI transformation. You have recently highlighted that the global housing crisis is often actually a data problem. How can AI help pivot from making billion-dollar guesses to making data-driven decisions that actually reach the most vulnerable populations?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, in a lot of our work, and a lot of the reasons I work with, DFIs and governments around the world, is to design policies that are based in reality. And the biggest challenge when I'm working in Africa, for example, is finding the data. It's incredibly hard and time consuming and expensive to find the right data. And so what happens without the right data is that we don't build the right type of homes. And I often like to say that we don't have a housing deficit. We always talk about, oh, we have a housing deficit, we lack housing, we need to build houses. But that's not exactly true. If you look at the data carefully, we have a lot of housing in different countries. I'll give you an example. In the US, we have more bedrooms than people. Isn't that crazy? In Ghana, in Africa, the housing deficit is 3 million units, but there are 2.5 million empty units. In a lot of countries, housing is being built, but they're just not being built for the right people and at the right price point. And that's a major, major issue, right? So it's not about just building more houses, because if you just build more houses, it might not actually be solving, homelessness or the housing deficit. It might just be meaning some people are getting richer. So when we design policies and programs, we need to make sure that the money spent by the government goes to the right people. And often, unfortunately, without the right data, that is not the case. So we're trying to make sure, especially now because governments have less money, the fiscal space is tightening, and we need to make sure that every dollar of subsidy that is spent goes to people who actually need it. And AI is actually helping, or I think we're still at the very beginning. Let me say, I think AI will help more in finding this data, collecting it, updating it, because just getting it once is not enough. You have to update it pretty often, and also analyzing it. So instead of hiring consultants and spending millions of dollars every few years, the AI can do it on itself and inform policies that can better target housing needs.
Okay, great. I mean, if you allow me, I can have a supplementary question. And
Sure.
what data or which is, I mean, deficient? I mean, as you said, the right data is the problem. It's not housing. I mean, I was also hearing Mamdani the other day. He said the number of homeless people and the number of homes we have, they are equal. I mean, the policy is fantastic. Data is there. I mean, but still, you got homes, and there are some other problems that I can talk some other day, just because that's not the topic for today. But what right data? As you said, that right data, we don't have the right data. What data you need exactly for housing?
So, for example, we need to know, what is the actual cost of the house that people can afford, and what is the subsidy needed? Because you don't need to subsidize the whole house. You need to subsidize, the portion that the households can't afford. Then we need to find out where people actually want to live and where they can realistically live. Is there land there? How much does that land cost? Who does it belong to? And because land is a fundamental issue about housing. It's not really a housing issue, it's a land issue. As our world has become more and more urbanized, our cities have expanded greatly, land has become in short supply. And to quote Mark Twain, he once said, "Invest in land, they're not making any more of it anymore." It's the one thing you can't make more of, right? And so it's really the cost of land that's going very high up. And unless governments know where this land is and how to acquire it and how to kind of make use of it and then get the right people in the right locations, they're just kind of building blind. And I'll give you an example of a failed housing program that's quite famous. But Mexico, back in the early 2000s and 2010s, they built millions and millions of affordable housing units that were very, very nice and very affordable. And 6 million of them were empty. They could not sell them. Nobody wanted them. And the reason wasn't they were too far away from jobs. They were too far away from the city. And you can build as many houses as you want and they can be very affordable, but if they're not in the right location, your program will fail, right? And so governments need to know where can they build, how much does that land cost, who is going to live there, and what the subsidy amount should be. Without that data, it's going to be very, very hard to do it.
Okay, that this I mean about Mexico, 6 million homes are empty just because these homes were away from the job place. That okay. Very good. My next question is about urbanization and rural needs. You recently returned from Timor, let's say,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
observed how housing policy often neglects rural communities during early urbanization. In our quest for abundance, how do we ensure that rural families aren't left behind as world rushes towards cities?
That's right. No, it's a very good question. And that's where we also need more data, right? Because we need to know where to invest our scarce resources. I wish we had more abundance, right? But unfortunately, we have a lot of scarcity. And so if you're a government and you only have, a few $1 million to invest in housing, is it better to invest it in cities or is it better to invest it in rural areas? And it really depends on the country. Timor-Leste is one of the last countries in the world to urbanize, and we still have a predominantly rural population, but that's going to change. This is a worldwide trend, and they're not going to escape it. I don't think so. So, is it best to invest in the past or invest in the future? And that's where data comes in again. Without the right data, you just don't know, and you're driving a blind. You're driving blind. You're blind. Um, and so that's where we're really trying to help. We talk to people, we collect the data, and try to figure out, where is the need the greatest? Where is it going to be in 10 years? Where is it going to be in 20 years? Because housing is an asset that lasts decades. So you need to invest with the future in mind. And that, again, this is time consuming, it's hard work, and I think this is where AI can start to really help countries decide where should they invest, where can they have the biggest bang for their buck.
Wow, thank you. My next question is about climate resilience. With your work in disaster prone region like Haiti and Papua New Guinea, what are the most abundant yet simple resilient construction techniques that can be scaled for self-built markets to protect lives from climate change?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe I'll start by saying why it's so important to invest in climate resilient housing. And it's because a house is expensive thing a family will ever buy, right? And in almost every country in the world, a house is the most expensive thing you'll ever buy, and it will take you decades to save for it or to reimburse a mortgage. So if it's the most expensive thing you'll ever buy, you want to make sure it's not going to be destroyed. You want to make sure it is safe and it will not collapse during an earthquake or a cyclone. You want to make sure it's going to be not too hot inside or too cold. You want to make sure it's comfortable and livable, right? And those are very, very basic things. But unfortunately, in a lot of countries, people have a house, but it's not a safe house. It could collapse during an event, it could get flooded, and you lose all your belongings and everything you've ever saved for. So that's why, climate resilient housing is not just a phrase, it is so important. We can't have households lose decades of savings and their lives in the process. And so when we think about what households can do when they're self-building, what we try to do is we try to adapt to the local culture and not impose a solution from, a construction company in America or something. So what we often do is we go to the local place and we figure out what people are already doing. right? So we worked in Afghanistan, for example, which was very interesting. They built these mud brick houses. And a lot of them collapsed. They're more like compounds. It's a compound with the little houses inside. And a lot of them collapsed during an earthquake. And what we did is we calculated what little tweaks can you make with the same materials. You're not importing anything. You're not changing the culture or the construction technology. But what small changes can you make to the design to make this house more resilient so it won't collapse? And we've done the same thing with bamboo households in Asia or brick houses in Latin America. So we're not, because it's too hard. If you come in with your own design that doesn't respect the local culture and where everything is imported, it's just not going to ever happen. So we need to work with what is already on the ground. We use BIM modeling to kind of see what changes would help, and again, the use of AI, right? And then recommend these small tweaks and changes to make the houses safer and more livable.
Thank you. Great insight, and especially thanks for mentioning Afghanistan and the countries alike. I mean, we that's our neighboring country. Now, my next question is about inclusive finance. As you've already focused on that, the housing or construction is the easiest part of what you're doing, but actually is the policy. So, my question is: you focus heavily on making housing markets inclusive. What is the biggest mental shift needed by private investors and the governments to view low income housing not as a risk but as one of the greatest investment opportunities of our time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a saying that whoever will disrupt housing will be a trillionaire overnight. um, but I mean, there's a few things to unpack here. One, housing is very hard to disrupt because it's something that's very local, right? Whatever works in one municipality might not work in the next municipality. Not even to mention countries. So it's also very, very finance intensive, right? So it takes a lot of financing and a lot of time to develop a single project. So it's not like software. Software, you've done it, you've developed it, and you can sell it infinitely to as many people as you want. Construction, every time you start a new project, you have to go through all the process all over again, right? So it's incredibly hard to scale. And we've seen some amazing companies in one location, and as soon as they go to another location, they don't know how the things work, they don't know their clients, they don't know the government, and they fail in the next location. So it's very, very location specific. And that's why we're not seeing any companies scale at tremendous speeds. Actually, we're seeing a lot of bankruptcies, unfortunately, in a lot of these innovative housing companies because it's so hard to go, and scale. But talking about finance, I think one of the things that is often misunderstood is that in most of the world, most households will never get a mortgage. We can just forget about this idea of a mortgage because a mortgage relies on formal income. So having, tax slips and a monthly statement saying that you're getting this income. And it relies on land titles and having a secure land title. And in most places, from Latin America, Africa, and Asia, people they work in the informal sector, so they don't have a formal income and they don't have a formal land title. So a mortgage is out of the question. So we need to think differently about how to finance these households. And so there's been a lot of great innovation in the sector with unsecured kind of housing microfinance that helps people, finance differently without relying on their income or the title as a security. And so I think that shift has been great. In India, for example, it's become a huge industry, right? Once they made that shift, they understood that there was a lot of money to be made in serving the informal population. Unfortunately, in places like Africa, this hasn't quite taken off yet. And there's a huge opportunity to actually service this part of the population, which is the majority.
Country's issue. Like, I mean, when we talk of finance, I mean, I am also finance professional. I have to check the land title. I have to check the formal income and taxation, and in and out, and where the income is coming from, what's going on, how it's spending, or more. 80% of my economy is undocumented, unfortunately. And I am asking everyone for the bank statements, cash flow statements, and income tax returns, and blah blah blah. Lots of things. Everyone coming to me. I mean, he gets scared of what I talk about, and he looks
Yeah.
me at like an alien. And so what's the disruption? How can we disrupt it?
With alternative financing models. I mean, these mortgage models, I think, are very Western, and they're built on kind of these Western institutions. But we can look at different things, and again, AI comes into play here. I know a few kind of small AI companies that are helping underwrite informal households. So if you own a shop and you're selling different types of things in your shop, maybe you could use AI to determine their cash flows. Something that used to take a loan officer a month can take an AI a few minutes to determine. We can determine, for example, how busy is the street that this person is on? How much inventory do they have? How often does the inventory turn over, et cetera, et cetera. And based on that, we can determine their cash flows and try to underwrite a loan based on that and not based on the collateral.
And that's fantastic. I mean, like inventory, or one more thing. Can't we see someone is spending? I mean, someone's kids are going to nice school, he's driving nice car, he's got a very nice business, and his lifestyle is quite better. He's living and spending. Although his the sources of income can't be confirmed, but we can see what's he spending, and we can just take that data for like 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe more. Just because AI is already there, we can just put in every data. I mean, so spending patterns is like we can see his traveling and expenditures, and so if he's sustaining, or she's sustaining for like 5 years, so it is supposed, or like we can just throw a trajectory in the future for the 5 more years or 10 more years. So we may not go for 20 years finance, but we can go for 10 or 5 years at least. So we probably we need to disrupt, as you said. Okay, my last formal question before we get into discussion is about the future of living. Looking ahead to the next decade, what is your moonshot vision for a world where everyone has access to green, affordable, and safe homes? What is the first step we must take today to get there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the future is urban, right? So most people will be living in urban environments. I mean, we are already urban. And so we need to think about using land and using it carefully. And I think the future is vertical, right? Whenever we watch sci-fi movies, the sci-fi movies are often in cities and they're skyscrapers. They're always vertical. So I know a lot of cultures around the world, I travel a lot, and they always tell me, oh, Olivia, in our culture, we don't want to live in an apartment. We want to live in a house. And I think that's great, but it's as cities urbanize, you just can't have houses anymore. Otherwise, the city is going to stretch into infinity. So people are going to get used to living in apartments. But I also am a big fan of sci-fi. And in sci-fi, there's two types of kind of futuristic cities. There's the cyberpunk ones, which are, the dark, grainy, lots of like neon signs everywhere. And then there's the solar punk, which is still vertical, but more with trees and waterfalls and sunshine. Um, and we need to decide now, what do we want the cities of the future to look like? Do we want them to just be skyscraper after skyscraper, or we want them to have nice use of public space and parks and trees and nature embedded into them? And I'm obviously for the solar platform. But I think we need to imagine what the cities of the future will look like now, because the decisions we take today will shape those. The decisions we make with land, because land is, again, the thing that makes housing unaffordable. Let me give you an example. Construction costs have not gone up significantly in the U.S. since the 50s, if you adjust for inflation. What has gone up is land prices. And that's true in every country in the world. Land goes up exponentially, whereas construction more or less stays the same. So we need to think strategically, how do we use land properly in order to make housing affordable for the decades to come?
True. And now, I mean, I like to open the forum for general discussion. And as we were talking about disruption and for the living, not housing, but living as a service. I mean, that includes housing, connectivity, mobility, food, and energy, or you may call utilities. For $250 a month, I mean, does it sound crazy?
Oh, I mean, it depends on the location, but yes, I think it sounds completely crazy in a good way.
Oh, okay. I mean, since I mean, you are a disruption lover, and you are like manifesting disruption. I see really, and I'm also one of the enthusiasts for housing. What's that we can collaborate together to make this gentleman successful in making this living living affordable living as a service for $250. If we talk about housing, what are the elements that can disrupt the cost of housing? Apart, one is for sure is land. How about others?
Yeah, I mean, there's construction. I've been following a lot of different construction technologies, from 3D printing to modular construction. But all in all, they're not cheaper. What they do is they build faster. So they save on financing, right? So if you can build faster, then you need a shorter construction loan. And so you save on that. That being said, I think we should continue to invest in R&D and construction to make it cheaper. But talking about the future, I think there's a few things that are going to happen in the next decades. Anthropic released their jobs report it was like 2 months ago. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's which jobs are going to be the most disrupted by AI. And it looks like all the jobs that can be done remotely on a computer are going to be disrupted. And those where you need to be present, like being a teacher, a waiter, a nurse, etc., an artisan, those are the ones that won't be disrupted, right? Because we will still need a lot of jobs that need to be done manually. And so if you think about what that means, it means that people will need to live close to where they work. And it's a bit ironic because we always thought that technology would enable us to work remotely, which was true during the pandemic and afterwards. But in the longer term, I think it will be the reverse, and that technology will force us more to be place-based. And so the disruption with AI is going to be huge, and it's going to impact real estate. And it's going to mean we need to live closer than ever to our jobs. And so when we think about economies, we're going to have to think about housing at the same time. They're two of the same things. They're not two different things. And so maybe employers will need to start providing housing too, right? We always think about housing as your own family's responsibility, but it doesn't always have to be so. If you are an employer and you want your employees to be happy and come to work every day and not spend 2 hours commuting, then you also need to start thinking about housing as part of your responsibility.
Thank you, Olivia. And what governments are making mistakes, like as Mexican government did, like 5 million homes are there, but I mean they're away from job place, and so that's why they are empty and nobody could buy, just because of the distance. And you're also a believer of the future is urban, and still I mean you believe that this AI gonna disrupt housing one day. What are the possible aspects that AI gonna do, and what governments are making mistake as long as subsidy is concerned? What part of subsidy or how should government should subsidize these housing projects? And what are the mistakes like Mexican government did? The
Oh,
mistakes.
I see a lot of mistakes. I see too many mistakes, unfortunately. I think the first mistake is just thinking that because you're building a lot of units, your housing deficit is going down. And so I speak to governments and they say, oh, yes, look, we built all these units. So now, of course, our housing deficit went down. But they're actually, once you ask them to measure the housing deficit again, then they're shocked. So building more units doesn't necessarily mean your housing deficit is going down. You have a less of a housing shortage. Um, and that's for many reasons. People in a lot of emerging markets do not have any place to invest their money. So if you're making money, then you have to put it somewhere. And in a lot of cases, it's informal money, or it's black money, or it's money you can't put in the stock market. So you invest in real estate. And so I go to some countries and I speak to people and they buy 6 or 7 houses just because they have nowhere to put their money. So if we want to definancialize housing, because that's the issue, is that housing is being used as an investment, we need to provide alternative investments to people. And that's something that the governments are not thinking about, right? They're only thinking about building units, but not thinking about, okay, if I'm making money, where can I allow people to invest their money in a safe way where they can make a good return? The other thing they're not doing is that they're not thinking critically about their programs. They're not measuring the impact of it. They're just thinking about number of units in that single way, but they're not thinking about quality of life or who is being served. And if you can't measure what you are doing, then you're not going to get, any results.
Okay, Olivia, that's cool. I think you must write a book about also the mistakes the government must not make, just because, I mean, earlier, yeah, I mean, it should not be repeated in the age of AI at least. Like, I mean, if one government is making mistake and same other, so there, these, I see the great gap of connectivity between the governments and the housings, the ministries, and all these should be connected. And I know, I mean, AI can help with solar. Now, and one more thing about abandoned or the empty homes. As you said, the world is getting urban. People are moving from village to urban locations or cities. I've been following some policies of the government of Japan, government of Sweden, even in certain other, like Switzerland also, or other European countries like Norway and like Italy also, or maybe there could be others too, where in villages they are all empty. Now, now the problem of sustainability has risen, just because all the probably maybe 4 or 5 generations have shifted from there. No, nobody lives there. They are getting you home for $1 or for no money, and they are also funding you. Even Japan, they'll fund you. They'll fund you negatively. I mean, they'll fund you, and then they'll write up the loan also. But they want you to live in the villages and to revive. Although it's very difficult, it is very difficult to leave one's own culture and to embrace others, and that also where nobody's living. It's altogether nightmare. But in the countries like third world countries, in Pakistan, in India, in Bhutan, in Sri Lanka, or a lot of the country which are third world, and there are a lot of youth is there. Like in my country, more than 60% or 65% is youth, and they're educated. They can work from home just because they are very good at computers and so on. And I hope other part of the world is so. So is there any possibility, as you're a thinker, as you're a policymaker, do you think in terms of economic growth that these countries, we can just make some platform, or we can help reach these countries to the youth or these third world countries? Is there in that can we be some combinator, like coordinator, or like someone we can just generate some platform to make this gap filled, so that these villages, they become again, there is hustle bustle, people live there, and the other party, that the people going there can earn economically. Well, have your say on the issue, please.
I think it's very difficult. I think a lot of these initiatives to try and repopulate rural areas are a little desperate. Um, some people have even said that we should not even try to repopulate them, and we should give them back to the forests, turn them back because we have a huge problem of deforestation and everything around the world. So why not return the land that is no longer being used by humans to nature? And then make sure that our cities are well built and welcoming. And I think that's the important thing that we haven't discussed yet, is that we know that urbanization is going to continue, especially in emerging markets, right? We know that millions and millions of more people are going to arrive in cities in Pakistan and India and so forth over the next few years. How can we get ready to welcome them? How? We know they're coming in search of opportunity. We know they're going to need housing, right? And so, one thing that governments have not focused on, and I think they really should, is rental housing. Because when a rural family comes from, let's say you're coming from rural Pakistan and you're arriving in the city, the first thing you're going to do is not buy a house, right? You have no money, you're coming in search of opportunity, in search of a job. Buying a house is far, far in the future. What you need right now is an affordable place to rent. And governments around the world, again and again and again, focus on home ownership programs. But that's not what's going to stop the slums from forming. You need rental housing if you want to stop slums from forming.
Wow, that's amazing. And how about your enthusiasm on affordable living as a service for $250? I mean, are you in just because I am
Yeah, that would be
asking everybody? I am asking any person who's working for a living, like as if you come from a very rich background of housing, and you're working now beyond housing also. I mean, you're working on the policy, housing policy, and I would really request you to please just, I mean, fetch the data from my government housing, that Pakistani government housing policy, and please give me write a blog, and and I'll try to get you connected with my government so that you can have utilization of your knowledge into our policy. Are you
Yeah,
in
no,
for
I'm
such
working with
ventures?
some of your colleagues in the Punjab Affordable Housing Program.
Sorry, I didn't get you. I mean, that's amazing.
We're
What is
working, it's a little, yeah, it's a little, we're working on maybe doing some housing public private partnerships. Because PPPs, when you think about them, they combine the best out of both worlds. Often the government has land, right? But the private sector is really good at building and they can find their own financing. So in places where the government is out of money, but they still have land, they can say, okay, we put this land up to tender, but you have to promise to build housing for these types of people. And PPPs are really great for rental housing, right? Because then the government can hold on to land in the long term. It's still the government's land. And the private sector can build, finance, and operate it over 30 years and provide rental housing to people arriving into cities at a very low cost. So we're trying to think through some innovative mechanisms that can do this. Yeah.
And that's cool. I mean, if you're in for such ventures, that's fantastic. We the third world countries will be blessed with your wisdom and the experience that you have for this. Thank you so much. Last message to one advice for me and message to the planet.
Sure. So next week I'll be in Baku for the World Urban Forum.
Ooh. I've been
Uh,
following that. That's fantastic.
so if you are
Wow.
there or anybody's there, please contact me. It's very, very exciting because for the first time, the world is coming together. I think it's 30,000 people are going to
Yeah.
talk about housing. And it's such a critical time to talk about housing because housing is getting more expensive in every country in the world. It's a global problem. And so coming together to talk about this is going to be very, very special. Um, just to see that, yeah, people care. It's housing is now definitely on the world agenda.
That's amazing. And how can people join virtually?
I think you just go to wuf.com and or wf13.com, I think it is. Yeah.
And are you keynote speaker there?
I'm going to be speaking at several events, yes, including on AI.
Wow. And is there any slot available that I can take you live there? I mean, there from?
Sure, probably, yeah. We can be in
Yeah,
touch.
yeah, we've got numbers. I mean, we've got WhatsApp numbers. Let's keep connected. And I'm really excited for Baku. And I've been following
Yes,
each post and really commenting on that, just because housing excites me. That's in my blood.
it's
Yeah.
critical.
So,
That's right.
and I really looking forward to that affordable housing as a service. You know, that's the disruption for housing, and that could be the real solution. And my part of the world needs you the most, just because our part of, like, out of 8 billion people, 3 billion people are living in inadequate housing, and we are also one, like around, like it's 12 million we 12 million families in Pakistan are homeless, or they are living in the condition which are we can't call the settlements as home. So I hope
Yeah.
you do write some blog on Pakistan, and for sure for Pakistan and Punjab also, for the affordable housing program is going on in this province also. So I'll welcome you if you want to come to Pakistan, be my guest, and we can have fantastic use of your expertise. Thank you so much. And
Thank
and
you.
message from and advice for me. You didn't get me any advice.
Keep on doing what you're doing. This is great. We love to see
Thank
that
you.
people care. And I think the main thing is we need the next generations to get involved, right? My generation did not solve it, but maybe the younger generations will. And it's going to be, again, housing is very local. We need people in every city to get involved. Even if one city solves it, the city next door might not. So we need as many people as we can. And so, you doing these podcasts, I think it helps, broaden the message.
Thank you, Olivia. I mean, I've got a suggestion in the end, that can you generate? I mean, I'm a part of a group which is working for the climate. A buddy from Switzerland, he has generated this group, and we've got not country wise but city wise groups.
Oh, okay.
So you as the mentor and the master of the this project, yeah, like affordable housing worldwide.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, if we can make a WhatsApp group city wise, those
Yeah,
people can connect in the cities. Like, I mean, the city you live in, it's easy for you to plan a hike, or a picnic, or like one dish party. Everybody brings one dish from home, and you, the enthusiasts, can get together, and then from your city, or I be the lead in my city, and I keep talking to the people, or online also, in physically. I mean, that generates lots of value, and we can disrupt housing without spending any penny or extra money on this, and we can
yes,
generate a
good idea.
huge, like, I mean, do talk on there in Baku about this. I
Mhm.
mean, do let me know if at all I can get connected to the enthusiast like yourself there. Just because I'm crazy after about, I mean, I'm I'm so excited about housing, and I want to do anything possible for me. Just because I've been podcasting for 15 last months, and I've got more than 300 interviews on me for the profession like yourself. But I mean, housing is my love, and I would love to work for housing as my moonshot. And what's your moonshot? Lastly,
I'm not sure. That's a good idea. I've had as I've aged, I'm trying to be more realistic. But I'd love to have an AI that can replace me. Maybe I'll put myself out of a job. But a lot of my work, I feel like, can be done by AI. Kind of like having a digital copy of myself that people all over the world can talk to. So again, because I see the same mistakes all over the world being done, I just don't want to see any more mistakes. Because every dollar that gets spent on the wrong house is a dollar wasted, but it's also carbon that's wasted, right? And so when you have 6 million empty houses, think about the carbon sink that was. Yeah.
thank you so much, Olivia. It was pleasure having me on my show. That is amazing. Thank you so much, and keep rocking. I mean, you are my rock star of housing, and I am a great follower of yours, and I keep following you, and we keep connecting. And I'll see you there in Baku also virtually. And
Yes,
I
great.
tried,
Yeah.
I tried, but I mean, it was a bit expensive for me, and I was not professionally, I'm born. I couldn't travel, and one day I'll see you on some housing conference. Thank you
That would
so
be
much.
great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take good care.
Thank you so much. And we will be talking on WhatsApp again. Thank you.
Okay,
Stay
sounds
blessed and bye
good.
bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye. Yeah, Olivia, we've